Welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I am Michael Branson Smith, and I am here with
Jim Groom, big fan.
Jim Groom, big
Thank
fan.
You for that, Michael.
And we
Even
are
for
doing
saying my name for me. Say my name.
And this is the first movie that neither of us had watched. You know, I've been building a list of probably like at this point it has like 100 films of options, and Paper Moon from 1973 kind of appeared, and I was like, oh my god, love Tatum O'Neal, all-time favorite performance in Bad News Bears.
That's
And it was like, oh, okay. She stars in this film with her father, Ryan O'Neal, and it's a story of a father, maybe her daughter, maybe her not, and there are a couple of grifters, and set in 1935 in the prairies, right? As they travel from, they end up in Missouri. I don't remember where they start from. Is it Kansas? Yeah, something like Kansas. And you know, it's Peter Bogdanovich, who's already kind of like a famous director for, what is the film he does with, I'm just so bad.
The Last Picture Show.
The Last Picture Show,
and
thank you.
That before this,
with Jeff
What's
Bridges.
Up, Doc?
Right,
yeah,
and What's Up, Doc? And Jeff Bridges.
Sybil Shepherd.
And Sybil Shepherd, right. And so there,
amazing,
he's already
black and white.
And he's part of that, like the new Hollywood. He's part of the generation of the new Hollywood. And, you know, Peter Bogdanovich, people now would know him more as from The Sopranos. So he's an actor director, but I mean, you would never think of him as an actor unless these are completely different lives in a lot of ways, which is really cool.
Interesting too, because like Truffaut, he was a critic come director.
Right, yeah.
And he was really good friends with like Orson Welles. Like they were like buddies.
Yeah. And he tells this one story in an interview with another director who he's talking to him about how, you know, the film's based on this book named Addie Pray by Joe David Brown. And they wanted the picture was going to be named Addie something like Adventures of Addie Pray or something like that. And he had come across, he described how he kind of, when he's doing an era-based film, he looks through music. That's kind of one of the first things he does from the time. And he found this song that is, oh gosh, where is it? It's because it's based on the entire thing. It's a Paper Moon, and it's a song that's from the 30s, and it's kind of cool because it talks about being the lyrics are, it's only a paper moon, but and there's a lyric, but it wouldn't be make believe if you believed in me. And Ella Fitzgerald recorded it back in the 40s. But anyway, so he liked, Paper Moon, that's great. And so he told the producer about it. Let's rename it Paper Moon. They're like, that's a stupid title. So he called up, you know, he's like confused, and he calls up none other than Orson Welles, who's cutting something in Europe for some movie, whatever, or something. Exactly. And he said that the connection was terrible. And he says, what do you think of the title Paper Moon? He's like, Paper Moon, I love it. You don't even need to make the movie. Just release the title.
And this is where, you know, I don't agree with Orson Welles. I think the title is confusing as hell. I don't think you have any idea. Probably one of the reasons I never saw this movie was because of the title.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because of the way it was framed, and you know, it was obviously
black and white.
We'll talk about Ryan O'Neal and black and white, and me as a kid maybe not seeing through this, but like finally having seen this movie after 53 years, I freaking loved it. I thought this movie was amazing in every way, and we'll talk about that. But I thought the title didn't, you know, give you an insight to it. And I don't know, titles are tricky. I understand that. I wonder what Orson Welles saw in it. So like saw it as the ultimate title. But it is interesting also that he had to film the one scene with a paper moon to actually let the studio say, okay, you can call it Paper Moon. Because that didn't exist. So they built it. They shot it.
And it becomes this accidental moment a moment in the film added basically out of necessity, which becomes the propulsion to create an ending, which they didn't know how they were going to end it. Because the movie apparently ends halfway through the book, of the story of the book. And so, but the crazy thing is, this is Ryan O'Neal, who's already been in the previous film with directed by Peter Bogdanovich, which kind of makes him a star, right?
Yeah.
And he's
well, what makes him a big star though is the love story. With
Oh,
Ally
right.
McGraw,
Before that,
because
sure.
That is actually, I think that took the Oscar for best film over The Godfather.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's crazy.
That's crazy to think
love
about.
Story. Yeah.
But anyway, that's the film that propels him into mass stardom.
Right. I mean, he had been a TV actor prior to that, and this is what gets him into film. Right.
And his TV show was really popular in Italy. So my wife knows him through his 60s TV shows. I was like,
that's so
really?
funny.
I was like, I only know him through Barry Lyndon. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So it's What's Up, Doc.
A lot to say about him.
So he's worked with Peter Bogdanovich in What's Up, Doc? And
What's
it was
Up, Doc?
really successful. And he completely trusts Peter Bogdanovich. But Peter Bogdanovich is like, hey, and there's this great interview of Ryan and Tatum from 2011 talking about Paper Moon. And Ryan's talking about, like, I trust Peter Bogdanovich completely. And then Bogdanovich is like, well, what about your daughter? He's like, wait, what?
Exactly. You trust me that much?
Yeah. And it's just like, well, she's got a deep voice. And he's like, yeah. And so he tells this story about, Ryan tells this story about how at this time he's separated from his wife, who was, oh gosh, I'm not ready with names. Joanna Moore, who is also an actress. And they're separated, and they were married at 22, by the way, and Tatum came less than a year later, so you got a sense of how that came together. And then there's her brother Griffin, also from Joanna Moore. They're living with her, and he's like a weekend dad right at the time. And so Tatum is really into her dad at this point, and the situation with her mom sounds really, really bad. Like, post their breakup, she gets really, really hard into drugs and really, really neglectful mother. And Tatum and Griffin are abused. It's pretty grim. And there's so much about the real life that contrasts with this that's so grim. And that's part of it. Can't help but get intertwined with how we read this movie, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I didn't know about Ryan O'Neal. And
yeah.
when you kind of think about Ryan O'Neal, like, the TV show that my wife knew was Peyton Place.
Yeah.
And that was super popular. And then A Love Story makes him a Hollywood, icon. And then he's a bit of a Hollywood icon, for most of my childhood throughout the 70s. Like, I wouldn't have seen Barry Lyndon when I was a child, for sure.
No.
But you knew Ryan O'Neal.
Or
right?
A Love Story either, for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. But you knew Ryan O'Neal. Like, you knew, like, his face. You knew he was, like, totally an icon.
Well, he ends up with Farrah Fawcett, the biggest, like, iconic woman, like, poster woman of the 70s. Like,
absolutely.
He ends up marrying the, like, most adored woman by young men of an entire generation.
That's true. And I think the thing a lot of people would say about Ryan O'Neal is that he couldn't act. Is that, like, he wasn't an actor. And depending upon how you feel about Barry Lyndon, which amazing.
Yeah.
But, like, the whole thing was Kubrick never cared about the actor, right? They were just a vessel for his vision, and they didn't have to know how to act or whatever. So
he'd keep running them through endless takes until he got something that was a modicum. I was like, that's good enough. He just wore them down.
And he hated them. Like, he had total disdain for actors. He felt like they were the lowest form of the cinema ecosystem. Mm-hmm. But after seeing this film, I was like, Ryan O'Neal's an amazing actor. Like, he was great in this.
I think so, because, like, it's some part of it, you read him, it's like, man, he's, like, fast talking in this way that seems sloppy, but then you realize it's really intentional, right? He is kind of slow-witted, right? You realize because, Addie is so much quicker than him. right? Like she's catching on to who are the marks way faster than Moze is. His character is Moze, and Addie is Tatum O'Neal's character. And so at first it comes off as, yeah, like he's kind of like, who are you reading for, right? You know, and then you realize, oh no, he's not that bright, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain amount of like the relationship between him and his daughter. I realize that's his daughter in real life, and that's his kind of surrogate daughter or possible real daughter in the film. And there is a real rapport, whether that's what Bogdanovich is going for, because he knew that would be the case. But those two and the way in which they gel together in that relationship, I mean, I think it makes them both better, and it makes the performances just really like solid. I thought I couldn't stop thinking. I mean, the film is beautiful too.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stop thinking about the performances both of them put on, not just Tatum O'Neal.
Yeah. So Tatum O'Neal, like, well, just let's back up a second first too. So in this conversation
Am I not
about
on
how
script here right now?
No. We don't ever have scripts. We have notes. We have loose notes that we dabble around with as talking points. Which part is where I'm coming just back to one of those talking points is in this conversation, you know, Tatum and her dad are on stage. It must have been some sort of presentation of the film again, like a 30-year anniversary, I think it was. And, you know, they're talking about their relationship and how then it's like contextualized. And there's even more context because 2011 turns out to be this year that they do this reality TV show, which is it's about their reconciliation because and it was the first time that they've been like estranged for almost 25 years at this point, you know, and I mean, there's so much messiness in this family. They're like tabloid tidbits, the O'Neal family, and it's really so much as it is tragedy. And you know, even Tatum falls into, unsurprisingly, as a young actor that's treated like an adult. And that's another thing about this film is like, so she talked about how, so she's 9 years old. She barely can read. She didn't like her new school in Phoenix where she was with her mom. And her dad's like, well, if you do this movie, you won't have to go to that school anymore. And she's like, yes, I love spending time with my dad. This will be awesome. But she's at the same time, it's like, she would have thought like a 2-hour movie would take 2 hours to make, you know? Totally. So she had no idea what she was getting into. But it was her speaking in the past, and she's speaking through this in this moment in her life where she's trying to reconcile with her dad. You get a sense that that must be coming through. She's fondly looking back at that time, and maybe like this is the only way that their relationship was ever good, when they were truly working together. Which also makes me think about like, it is one of these most wonderful things you could have as a parent, is to have this like shared interest with your child and have that time with them. And that's, even though it's grifting, right, in the movie, yeah. And then in real life it's acting, right? They get to work together in this shared love of performing together, and their relationship through the work or the activity is where they're incredibly comfortable. But outside of that, they're completely uncomfortable in real life. And in the film, they're even uncomfortable, but it doesn't matter because it all works out because it's Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, it made me think about like, just, I feel so lucky to share like, you know, my daughter's art making, and she trusts me to give her feedback and these things. And you know, and we all get to spend time, and my wife and my son, we each got one, right? We each have one that kind of has affinities interest-wise. And so these are the kind of things this is what I feel like is coming through in the film, that relationship you're speaking of.
It's interesting too, because so I collect old video games, 80s video games, and I'm pretty passionate about them. I work on them and whatever. And I've set up a space here in Trento where they're in, although I got to figure out how to turn it into an arcade. And there's this Italian guy who helps me on them, and his name's Alberto, and he helps me work on them. And he's really good with, so if they're like all like they got water damage or ruined in somehow, he can make them like new. He's amazing. So anyway, he comes, the point of the story is he comes, and I'm usually going with him, and my kids are somewhere else in the house or doing something, and he's like, your kids, they're not interested in this?
I know.
They don't share your interest? I'm like, no. They don't share any of my interests. They have no interest in me or my video games.
Oh, Jim, I'm sorry.
Sad panda. Like and
Sad
subscribe.
Baba.
Sad Baba. Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, so that's my... thank you, Michael, for reminding me of the hardships of my parenting life.
I know. Yeah. And so, well, that was one read. And, and it is pretty rough because, like, in this film, like, Addie's playing this 9-year-old kid living in an adult world. And Tatum O'Neal talked about how, like, Peter Bogdanovich would get on his knees and basically explain, this is the adult world you're living in, where she's literally smoking cigarettes, learning how to, she demands her money, which is one of my favorite lines we're going to talk about. And, she's also, what else is she's doing? She's like conniving Trixie out of the picture at some point later on.
That's
she's
the
like,
best.
It's super awesome. But it's in contrast with the real world where she was like forced to be an adult pretty much since she was 9 too, right? Like dealing with the realities of like the drug abuse in her mother's household, and then her father doing the same thing once she loses custody and he has custody of her and her brother Griffin, and just being all too young. And Paper Moon is this fantasy world where everything works out, where versus the real world, it was never ending.
If you think it was bad for Corey Haim in the movies in the 80s, take that back 10 years to the 70s when kids had it was like all like no holes barred. Like shit just goes down in the 70s.
I mean, Tatum O'Neal literally is smoking in multiple scenes in this movie. Like, and you remember when they're like trying to they're stealing the liquor from the bootleggers, and she almost goes flying off.
Oh my god, that's the best scene. I didn't know if they like stunted it, but they couldn't have.
No. He talked about it because the in the interview with Bogdanovich, like he asked us like, what happened there? Was that on purpose? They're like, no, man, we nailed those things down. And one of them came loose, and she's like, that's a real scream of terror from Tatum. The irresponsibility of this time period, like the 70s, the beginning of like the cocaine era, which like 80s became infamous for, was already started in the Hollywood set. And like, Tatum O'Neal is like, she's dating Michael Jackson. She's hanging out with Brooke Shields, Barbara Streisand. She talked about, it's so sad. She talked about like meeting Cher and hanging out with her family in her household. And it's all women, unlike any other, because she's been surrounded by 3 brothers, 2 of them half brothers, one her real brother. And she's always been surrounded, and her father, she's always been surrounded by men. And she's like, when she was at Cher's household, which was all women, she's like, she never wanted to leave, but she had to. Like, she's never been in this, maternal space at all, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, the other thing, too, is I had no idea what a nut Ryan O'Neal was.
Yeah.
People called him, and I love this quote, the Billy Martin of Hollywood. So I guess he was like, obviously using drugs, heavy drinker, womanizer, and just not a lot of people just didn't like him after a while. And in the 80s, his career, so if you knew him in the 70s as a superstar, in the 80s, he was a nobody.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what happened. You think about it in like, I mean, there's examples of this in sports in that era too, and producers and directors and actors and actresses, like where like cocaine just like destroyed people, right? It's fucking crazy.
That's why they
just say no, kids. Just say no.
Your brain on drugs. Like that's where that all came from.
Yes, the frying egg that it was. Our brains. So, all right. So, in context of no maternal presence, the film starts with the funeral of Addie's mother, right? And there's this beautiful shot of basically Moze walking from the distance, and this is the beginning of many. I realized like this entire film is shot in what's called deep focus. There's none of the racking of focus shots. Like when you have a classic two shot and they're talking. You'll often see modern, not even modern, just filmmakers where the person that's speaking is in focus, and then as the other person speaks, they'll rack the focus to that person, and the foreground will become blurry, then the background blurry, blah blah blah. Everything is in focus in this entire film. Everything at all moments, and so you are always deeply invested in every single bit of this space. There's nothing left to the gauzy background, right? And it's especially true, and that is what compels part of what compels the relationship between Addie and Moze is when they're talking, there are these long takes often in the car, sometimes in a hotel room, where you see both of them for the entire shot, and it's a good 30-second to a minute take, and that's long. Yeah. And probably the most famous is one of the car shots we'll talk about later. So Moze shows up, and there's this beautiful shot, and then Moze immediately, says, "I'll take Addie to her aunt, who's all the way in St. Joe, Missouri." And they're like, "Please do." It's right after the Depression. No one has any money. They have we don't want her. We don't want to take care of her. I'm not going to mother this girl, right? And so they're like, "Good riddance."
You thought the 70s bad.
Yeah,
Check out the 30s.
Check out the Depression era 30s, And so, but Moze is real clever. He immediately goes to this house, and we learn that this man's brother had actually accidentally killed, or we don't know, had run over Addie's mom. And he cons him out of $200 to settle things. Otherwise, he's going to go to the courts, which he never would do. But he does. He gets $200 out of him. And he immediately uses a bunch of it to fix his car and I think get himself some new clothes or something. But definitely to fix his car, right? So he's already spending Addie's money. But this is where we learn right away Addie is smarter than Moze because they go and I love this scene, they go to a diner and he buys her a Coney Island and a knee-high. Eat your Coney Island and drink your knee-high. Can you translate that for the audience? What is that?
Antonella was like, "What is a Coney Island?" I'm like, "It's got to be a hot dog, right?"
Right. And what's a knee-high?
Well, it was the precursor to Dr. Pepper. It was a soda pop. I remember knee-highs. But then it became RC Cola.
RC
and
Cola,
then it became Dr. Pepper, and then now it's some other thing. But that knee-high I knew.
Yeah.
Coney Island I kind of knew. I just assumed it was a hot dog. But she was like, "What the hell is a Coney Island?"
Yeah, but you're like it. But that's great. Like the notion that like Middle America in the 30s, Midwest, that's what they would call a hot dog.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
It's also part of the detail I think Bogdanovich brings to this. And you said it earlier, and it's one of the things that struck me, is his attention to like Benny Goodman, to the songs, to her being attached to the radio, to that sense of the pop culture that everywhere surrounded these two people who might have in other contexts seemed like they were alone in this dislocated world.
Right.
No, they were very tapped in a strange way to a world that he created out of pop culture, which I think was really well done.
Yeah, he talked about in this same interview I keep referencing, there was no soundtrack. I mean, not that you need the interview to tell it, but this is a film without a soundtrack. And so all the music is in situ. So it's playing on the radio. That's the only way we hear radio. We spend a lot of the time in the car, so we hear a lot of music. But we learn towards the end that the radio that's in the hotel room is her radio that she's been toting around. I didn't realize that in the beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And so we hear like Jack Benny style, theater over the radio, as well as music. And so, yeah, it is. These details are amazing. So, but this is the first time we get and these are what I call like the Tatum O'Neal stare down, right? Tatum O'Neal, though, and I mean, I didn't know it in this, where I always just thought of it as her stare down of Buttermaker, right? From the Bad News Bears.
Exactly.
But it came out of this movie because, man, she owns a scene, right? And she stares down Moze when she describes, it's like, "You owe me $200. And he's like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" She's like, I heard your conversation with that man. That money's my money. It's not your money. And he's like, "I don't got it." It's like, "You're going to get it." And then it ends with like, "But I don't have it." And then she stares him down. She says, "Then get it."
I mean, I think, you know what? A couple of her stares, either it's a supercut or maybe just one beautiful one, deserves a Michael Branson Smith gif. Because there are moments, because of that deep focus and that pure black and white, there are moments where I'm like, that would be the perfect gif.
Yeah, I'll make something for you when you post about this film. I'll make a few.
I thought about it a lot watching this film, and I think it goes back to, like you said, the deep focus, but also Laszlo Kovacs, who's the cinematographer for this film.
Right.
Also did Easy Rider, and is kind of like one of the greats of the new Hollywood era. You can see his, imprint on this film entirely, and he worked with Bogdanovich more than any other director. He did 6 Bogdanovich films, and he is a genius. His stuff is amazing.
And so, after this, Moze realizes he's strapped to Addie now because Addie's not letting go because she gets loud in the diner, like she's gonna truly make a fuss, and the people, the owners of the diner come over and are like, "How's things going, hon?"
Yeah, they're actually like, that's a whole, that would be interesting to see that scene over the years, because there's always a scene where someone are checking in on the bad parent.
Right. Hey, how's that? Yeah, that would be a good supercut if we could find people trying to check a bad parent moment.
What's going over there? Are you all right?
Yeah, it's the equivalent of it's like, do you need some help?
Yeah.
Little lady, little girl, right? So funny. So he realizes. So he then proceeds to take her. He sells the train ticket that he was going to have Addie jump on to St. Joe's, and so now he's like, "Fine." Well,
station shot is so beautiful.
Oh yeah, there's so many beautiful, deep, wide shots of spaces like this.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. And so anyway, so they're forced to go. He has to take her along, and we are introduced to the first of many grifts of the movie. Not my favorite, but this is a really good grift.
This is a good grift, actually. I think it's a brilliant grift. I mean, it's a great grift. The grift is the ones where he goes to the widows' houses.
Exactly. It's the Bible widow, the widow's Bible grift, and so he just tells Addie to stay in the car, get down. He puts on a gold tooth, and he grabs a box out of the back of his car, and he hustles out, and he goes to the front door, and Addie picks up the newspaper, and this is the beginning of of a shot that's very Hitchcock-like, where they're revealing an object and how it's important to storytelling, and letting you read literally. And Hitchcock does this in Suspicion with the letters in the Scrabble-like letters spelling out murder and doubt, and The Key and Notorious, and it's always these kind of slow movements in, let you focus on it because it's important. It's a MacGuffin, right? Like, we need to know what this thing is. Yeah. And so we're going to learn that this it's important that you understand that this man has just died. He's circled this notification in the newspaper, and he's hustling this woman and pretending, I have this Bible that your recently deceased partner had bought for you. Right, and it had this custom gold and emblazoned or imprint of her name on it, and they do this hustle 4 times in this movie, right?
Yeah, it's so good too, and every time it's a little different.
Yeah,
based on Addie's reading of the situation, which
right. So,
like you said, Moze can't read anything. He's just
nothing.
Like, boom. Addie understands the context.
Right. And so Addie just is like, we get the second deep stare from Addie as she's like just kind of sussing out what's going on. And she figures it out without a single bit of explanation what's going on. Because she pulls out the press, the letter press that's in the back seat. She looks at it and she says Pearl. And he as she's reading Pearl, that's in reverse because it's a letterpress, he hears Moze say Pearl is what it's been impressed with. And so the hustle is like, there was a dollar deposit on this Bible he had bought for you, and it's impressed with your name in gold, but there's just a $7 remaining cost, and here you go. And so it works. And then the second one, which is so great, he tries to do the exact same thing with this woman in another house, and sure enough, a big, huge lawman comes out the door's like, who is that? Who's that man? Kansas Bibles?
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them. And then he's like starting to say, oh, I must have been mistaken. Sorry. But Addie walks up. She doesn't stay in the car for this one. And she immediately like takes up and says, Daddy, let's go. We need to, and she literally says like, my mom just died. My daddy, we got to go to service. And so the lawman feels bad. He says, wait on a minute,
Yeah, exactly.
And we think Moze is like super cautious and is expecting to get busted, but Addie knows way better and reads him super fast. And he's like, well, I think we should get it to make her happy, right? And then and he goes, how much is it? And Addie jumps right in, $12, right? Which is $5 more than she's supposed to ask, right? Because it's supposed to be $8 total, $7 remaining, right, to pay. And he's like, okay. And Moze is like, oh wow, we made an extra $5. And just so you know, like that's today's dollars, that's like $55, right? It's like basically a multiple of 10, pretty much. So such a good hustle. And so there's
but do you remember when Moze gets back into the car, he's like, don't you go changing the price on me.
Yeah,
That's the price.
Yeah, back in the hotel, he's like, I'm in control, right? Like, but he's realizing she's good at this, right? Because at the hotel, he's like, there's another close-up. He's like tapping his fingers, and we see a close-up of his hand, and he's got a ring on his ring finger, and it's like, wait, is the part of the hustle like he's married? Because it's like on his ring index finger, and he says, hey, what do you think about going into business with me? And Addie does the super stare, right? And so she is sizing him up so fast, as well as everybody else in the room, at all times.
Maybe she's concerned, or he's concerned, that she's better at his own trade than him.
Oh,
and how does that work on two levels in this film?
You're totally right, because she is sizing up adults all the time, probably in real life too, because she's been through some awful shit already, right? Yeah. She's already been locked in a garage by her mom with her brother, and they were forced to eat dog food, so they've been abused.
Yeah. So they've learned, like, it's not just Tatum O'Neal putting on a play, like, that kind of like suspicion, but also, like you said, a child beyond her years.
Yeah,
is really and absolutely probably the most cutest thing on film, like you've ever seen. I mean, there's so much going on with Tatum O'Neal, and she is extraordinary in this.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's like a few more. One where like they come to this woman who has like 7 kids, and Tatum's like, no, they already paid for it, and he's all mad, right? She's like, we're not screwing that woman. She's already screwed.
And there's another one, and you can see him like Addie saying, oh, look at how much. Look at this, look at that about the house. Look at how willingly she's doing. That one's $25 for her, or
right? And
some
24 because it was a $25 Bible, and she offers. She's like, "You're so cute. I'll give you an extra $5 just for coming to the door." And so she like makes $30 on the Bible because she's recognizing the mark. And the great thing is, after each one of these hustles, they get back in a car. And they're driving off, and we get these awesome, one of many 2 shots of them together, just talking about what's happened. And, Addie has this love of Frank D. Roosevelt, and how he's been discussing times are better, and we should be accepting that. And Mo's always saying, like, that guy's full of shit,
You think he's eating like us in this?
He's eating on a silver platter, And so their relationship is starting to grow, and in the car is a big part of that, and we get the music that's going, and she's singing to the music, and you're right, she's like utterly adorable.
Oh, gosh.
There.
No, it's really like striking just how cute she is in this film.
Yeah, and there's this one scene that I learned about in the interview that in the car, I'm misremembering the timing, but it'll come up later, where, he's mad at her about the money, and it probably is after the $25 hustle. I can't remember what it is, and they have all this money now, and he's like
hundreds of dollars now.
Yeah, at this point, they're like well over $300. So and he's like, she's like, you don't trust me, and he's like, well, you could just leave, and she's like, fine, I'll take my $200. She's like, and he's like, fine, we'll go to a train depot, and she whips out a map. and the cigar box, which they keep the money in, and she's going through the map, and they're talking about locations, and then suddenly it transitions to, wait, we're not going to that depot. That's the wrong direction. Then they're like, well, then let's... And then they start talking about all these towns they're going to go through, and he's like, suddenly like, wait, those are good towns. We bet there's some marks in that town. And so it transitions from fight to discussing the next script, and then it transitions to fight again. She's like, but we're out of Bibles. It's like, why did you tell me we're out of Bibles? And it's this incredible shot that I learned through the interview that it took 2 days to shoot, because they were dealing with, it was this really long, and Ryan O'Neal said he was going nuts. It's like, can't we just cut away? Like, can't we just, cut to me and then cut to her? And he's like, no, it must be the two shot, because you two are stuck together. And this is how we show you two are stuck together. Right. Which is so
what's
awesome.
A two shot?
A two shot is just two people in the frame at the same time. Right.
Gotcha.
All right. So a single is a single. It's one person. Two shots, a two shot. And so, that's what makes it. So typically, in filmmaking, you have a two shot, and then you're cutting one, right? As people are talking back and forth, or you're getting reactions, et cetera, et cetera.
But they didn't. They always kept them together.
They kept the two shot going, and he wouldn't shoot a single. And there's this great moment where, Bogdanovich describes how, like, there wasn't the director, the person interviewing was like, I can imagine there wasn't a single shot wasted. And he's like, nope, we used everything. Right. And it's like, that was the era where the industry, the big production houses like Paramount and whatnot, they were insistent on budgets. And he also said, he told this story, and this was Orson Welles again, or no, it was John Ford. He was talking, so he knows, like you said, some of the greats of cinemas. And he heard this, whether he was told this story or heard this story about John Ford doing a shoot, and his cinematographer says, why don't we get a close-up of this actor? And he's like, no, because then they'll want to put it in. He's like, I want to control the picture by shooting exactly the shots I want, right?
But he did a documentary about John Ford, too.
Yeah. That's
interesting.
Yeah, so back to Bogdanovich being like, like a true foe, like
really?
writing multiple books on cinema in particular directors. There's supposed to be one book, which now I want to read it too, which is about like all these interviews with multiple famous directors.
Yeah.
And so, but we're on to, I think, probably my favorite hustle, which comes up, right? So they're yet again, Addie, because Addie is really tomboy, right? She's got really short hair. She's wearing overalls and a checkered flannel, just like you, Jim Groom, a flannel long shirt.
Addie looks a lot like me, just you know. Go watch that film.
Or no, Jim Groom looks a lot like Addie, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I stole my look from Addie.
And she gets called a boy again, right? And so he's like, well, it's really sweet because he's actually really trying to be a good father figure here. He's like not cutting her down based on how she dressed, but if she wants to be read as a girl more, maybe we'll get you a ribbon. So they go buy a ribbon and put her hair, which she hates immediately, right? But this is where we learn the second con.
Yeah, the second con is pretty hard to follow.
Yeah, which makes it a really good con. Change raising.
Change raising. It's like I'll give you 10. Oh wait, I want change for these. 5. I don't know. How does it go, Michael?
I'll tell you. Well, I literally wrote it all down to make sense of it. Like because Addie pulls it off like 2 scenes later with Moze does it with the cashier at the store where they buy the ribbon. Addie does it with a cotton candy salesman. Moze used like talking about her the cashier's like family and their ages and all this stuff as a distraction, right, for counting. Where Addie just uses the cotton candy man's salesmanship as a distraction. Like he's too distracted. He was trying to get the next customer. And so this is how it works. All right. So Addie's buying cotton candy for 5 cents with $5. All right. The merchant gets a $5 bill. Addie gets $4.95. It's basically even, right? It's only plus 5 cents for one person. Addie then takes another dollar bill out of her purse and says, hey, how about you give me that $5 bill for 5 ones? Again, even trade. So they're both even, zeroing out. Yeah. And then Addie says, hey, with those 5 ones, how about I give you that $5 bill? Because remember, Addie has the $5 bill, and you give me a 10. And so we went from even to merchant $5 bill, Addie $10 bill. So Addie ends up plus $5. But when you're watching, you're like, I know something's going on here, but I didn't even catch
confusion.
it.
They're just doing it enough to confuse them. And
yeah.
Then the guy's like, get out of here, kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's the second hustle, which is awesome. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a real hustle. Like I could see it working today.
No, I could. And that's a really good hustle. I think the arguably the smartest one.
Oh, is the $20 bill hustle?
It's the $20 bill when they write on the bill.
Yeah.
That's pretty smart because she can basically say, I even know because I wrote the bill has my name on it. And
and this one comes up again in the context of like Addie's called a boy again by the barber, and he's being encouraging and says, hey, let's get you a dress. But it's like, if we're going to buy you a dress, we're going to get it basically for free, and I'm going to tell you how. And so he starts walking in. It's like, you're going to be buying a dress with this $20 given to you by your Aunt Ethel. And she's like, wait, what? And so on the back of a $20 bill, Moze is writing happy birthday, Addie, right? And they walk into the store separately. Moze buys something inconsequential for not much money and gives a $20 bill, gets change. Addie proceeds to buy the dress, right? That comes to like $4 something cents, right? Yeah. And she gives her a $5 bill and she gets the change. But then Addie proceeds to protest. I gave you a 20. And the cashier's like, no, you didn't. I gave you 5. I gave you 20. And I know it's a 20 because my auntie gave me, it's my birthday. And it says right on the bathroom, happy birthday, Addie. And she's like, wait, what? And then she's doing what she does. She causes a commotion. The owner pops up. They look at the 20 that Moze had given the register. And sure enough, it says happy birthday, Addie. They give her $20 and some candy on top of it. And she hasn't even paid for the dress.
That's a good one. Like, I could see being on the other side of that as a store owner feeling like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. My cashier must have screwed up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that was... And it's interesting because, by and large, we're through the movie. Like, that's how... I mean, there's other events. We have two more probably big events. But, like, that's the tenor of this movie. And the magic of the movie is their interaction.
Yeah.
And they're kind of going together and... her, like, you know, seeing a future and learning something with this man who's teaching her basically how to be a con woman. And, like, there is, like, a real, like, you would think, you know, when I thought about this movie, I read about it, I was like, a 30s comedy about the Depression. Right. I was like, oh, my God, I'm not watching this.
Well, we did Johnny Dangerously.
But also, it reminds me a little bit of Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
Right.
In the way in which they deal with that time period, which is a hard time period, I imagine, to film, right? Yeah. In some convincing way. But they do it so well with just these little, like you said, right? These little kind of grifts. And they make their relationship so powerful. Yeah.
No, it's the most wonderful part of it is like seeing their relationship evolve, and then it gets disrupted. And
we have another one who comes in to the story.
Yes, Trixie Delight, played by Madeline Kahn, who is one of my all-time favorite character actors. So one of the things I learned by watching this is like basically Peter Bogdanovich and Mel Brooks shared a lot of talent. They were like in the same universe pulling actors together. They must have known one another, or for whatever reason, they had the same sense of humor at least, maybe. And they saw that. And, Peter Bogdanovich saw Madeline Kahn. He described how he didn't even have her read. She walked in the door and she was doing a play in New York City and saw her and just started cracking up. And Madeline Kahn's like, what are you laughing at? And she's like, you're so funny. And Madeline Kahn's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But that's Madeline Kahn. She didn't have to do anything but just be herself. And she just like the way she's tripping herself up and down that hill and trying to play like nice with Addie. And we'll get to that in a minute. And it's just so funny. And so Madeline Kahn, my favorite role was her in History of the World Part 1, where she's Empress Nympho. right? And there's the scene with the eunuchs.
The best. And Gregory Hines is sitting there. He's like the skinny one with the feathers.
With the feathers, and his feather rises. Where the whole joke is like there's this woman dancing in front of the eunuchs, and like they're supposed to get an erection, right? And so, and one of the favorite things she says is like, it's with a Roman guard, and he's like, he goes, "That's not a eunuch," and she's like, "No, he's dead."
Or the one where they all come, the Roman soldiers, and she's looking at them, and she's like, "Yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes, yes." But she is hysterical, and this is her first real Hollywood film. Like this is kind of her. She was, like you said, doing Broadway, but this is her first film.
Right, and then she does also Young Frankenstein, which I think is probably her best known picture with Gene Wilder. But she's also Gene Wilder again, obviously, and I think she's in Blazing Saddles as well. Like there's
absolutely
so they're in the like Peter Bogdanovich and Mel Brooks had the exact same. It's like they had the same parents. They had like they must have like been kids together or something like that, and they heard all the same dad jokes or whatever.
But I mean. We talk about, I don't know if we've mentioned it, but Tatum O'Neal wins the Oscar for this at 9.
Right.
Still the youngest person to ever win an Oscar, I believe. I didn't do the research on that. But Madeline Kahn was nominated
as well
for an Oscar for this role.
And she has such a small part if you think about it.
Totally.
She's in the movie for maybe 15 minutes, like 4 scenes total.
But the scene on the hill is amazing.
Yeah. And so
that's why she got it.
I agree because that's it's one of the other stairs that turns into it's basically so Trixie was part of a carnival. She was a harem's slave, whatever the fuck that means. And Moze is paying going in for dozens of trips to see her again and again for whatever she's doing in that big tent.
Festival lap dance? Like, what exactly was that all about? It was so weird.
And what's going to be legal in 1930s, Missouri? You know what I mean? Like, what are they? I mean, there's not obscenity laws per se, but there probably are. Like, I'm just amazed that this is going on, right?
Yeah, it was pretty, sleazy. And there was a line around the tent. It was great.
But Moze wins her over, and the next day, there's this really long scene where they're having Moze and Addie while smoking again in bed. Moze and Addie are having a fight because he's telling her how they're going to have an extra couple passengers, right? Because it's not just Trixie. So the next morning, we meet Trixie, Madeline Kahn, and Emma Jean, who I don't know who she was. My God, I loved Emma Jean so much.
Yeah, she's a great foil.
Oh my God,
she's a very counterpart to Addie. So good.
Yeah. And so Emma Jean is this is like basically, Trixie's servant / maid. Like basically, Emma Jean explains her role best, which is like. She's, very poor black girl from the South, and her family's like, well, you go with that white lady and she'll take care of you because we can't. And at the time, because it's just the Depression, she's like, okay, I'll try this. And she's like, and she promised me $5 and she'd give me nothing but like a few cents. And so she just throws Trixie under the bus under and over again. And it's so funny. I mean, my God, she's funny.
She's great. She's like something out of I Love It, kind of like with Oh Brother Art Thou. She's like something out of a Faulkner novel. Yeah. Like she walks into this world and it's again, it gives that world more gravity. And there's a sense of that reality that, Bogdanovich is showing you it all, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that about Imogene. She was a great addition.
Yeah. And so the way we get to really know Imogene and therefore also Trixie's background is yet again a 2-shot of this time Addie and Imogene sharing cigarettes in the car while they're parked and Trixie's going to the bathroom yet again, right? And we're learning what's my favorite line? She talks about how basically she'll it's like does she get over much?
Does she put out much?
Does she put out much? It's like
a gum machine.
Like a gum machine. That's what it is. For $5. but she hasn't yet for Moze because she's trying to get as much out of him as she can. And so Addie's like, oh man, this is bad news because they're not working now. And she gets him to buy a new car. So suddenly their $300 or $400 at this point is drained dramatically. And there's this scene where she finally makes her stand. Like, I'm going to take care of this. This is the scene at the hill. So they do a little picnic right at the side of the road on a hill. And Addie's like sitting by this bare tree surrounded by this tall grass away from the other three of them eating. Imogene, Moze, and Trixie. And they're done, and they try to get in the car, and there's this long shot of Moze from Addie's perspective behind her head that says, come on now, it's time to go. And she doesn't move. And Moze has to walk all the way up the hill. And we see this all one shot. And Moze is like, what are you doing? And she's like, I ain't sitting in the back seat no more. It's like, you get rid of that woman. And he's like, no, you're a kid. That's an adult. You adults sit in the front, you sit in the back. And she's like, I ain't having any more of that. And so he gives up. He goes down and explains it to, we don't hear this. Same shot. And then Trixie comes all the way up to talk to her. And this is and her just the way that she like is walking awkwardly up the hill. And then she switches
trips.
She's like, I'm a mademoiselle. Nice. And she's like, I'm trying to be like, I'll teach you about makeup and all this. And at the same time she trips, she goes, son of a bitch. And then
exactly. How about my earrings? You want to try my earrings? Talks about the cosmetics. Talks about showing her how to be a pretty girl. I'll get you a bra.
Right.
And then she says, and this is the time where I was really struck, and like the way this movie moves from kind of comedy to real serious life is, she's like, you know, I'm not going to be here for long and that you can wait me out. I can't find myself to be part of anything for any amount of time. I ruin things. I don't know what it is about me. And she's getting into this like deep discussion with this 9-year-old about the travails of her life and how hard it is for her to be, you know, actually making a living. Kind of like, you know, Trixie and Imogene are kind of like the mirror image of Moze and Addie. And there's that kind of moment where they're together and Trixie knows because Trixie's smart, right? And she's also she's a survivor. She's gonna take the money when it comes. She knows that this isn't gonna last, and she's like, "Hey, let it. You'll have a few laughs. You'll benefit. I'll benefit, and he'll benefit. We'll all win." You know, it's such an interesting scene.
One big happy grifting family, but at the same time, she's feeling like she's getting the short end of the stick, still stuck in the back seat, even though she
smiles though after she says this. There's
she
this
totally respects
Trixie
the honesty.
And Addie that they kind of like, at least she knows what she is.
Right.
And I think that was clean. That was a cool moment in the film.
No, it very much was. I 100% agree. And, you know, I think Addie totally respects her in that moment and agrees to come back down. But very quickly she gets we're seeing another Addie long stare as Trixie and Moze are just yammering about, and she's stuck in the back seat with Imogene, and which leads to the final scene with Trixie. Basically, it's amazing.
Stupid joke that Moze tells.
Oh, what was it? So
he tells he's so many stupid jokes, but there was that.
But this is where he's acting brilliantly because he's so stupid and he's playing stupid. You're right.
His laugh after that is like, it's really so good.
Yeah, it's great.
That's at a moment where I'm like, wow, Ryan O'Neal is kind of nailing this role.
He totally is. Yeah, and so they go to this hotel and they rope in the concierge ultimately in a hustle to entrap Trixie, but it's played by none other than Burton Gilliam, another Mel Brooks favorite.
I recognized him. Tell me what he was.
He was the racist cowboy in Blazing Saddles. He's the dumb racist cowboy. Where Gene Wilder, they're like, wait, what? You know.
That's so good. You're right.
Yeah. So he's just a rando who just is not a real. It's a couple character acting parts in a Mel Brooks movie here and there.
I love the way he was dressed.
Oh yeah, and he is super slick. It's so good.
Slick. Yeah, he's great.
And so they kind of like Tatum sees his shot, the way that he's looking at Trixie, and he works with Imogene, and Imogene like is completely willing yet again to throw Trixie under the bus for $30. And they trick Trixie into accepting another. What's the phrase out? Does she not get out like a gum machine? Put out. Tricks Trixie into putting out for $25, and it's like no one puts out for $25. No one offers $25. And he's like, well, he's really smitten.
I want to see the cash. She says.
Yeah,
she says, I want to see if he has that kind of cash.
And there's this wonderful like it's like vaudevillian the way that like basically they make this happen. They're kind of keeping Moze at bay, and we have Addie running up and down the stairs like a little like puppy dog, that's bouncing
in
around in her dress, and it's crazy. And so, and they pull it off, and then suddenly Moze and Addie are back together again, and it's just the two of them.
And it works exactly.
Yeah, and it works super well. And my favorite moment is, where they're leaving yet again in the car, one of many two shots, this time from the rear seat, and they're and it's raining, and it's the best thing. Moze says, "Promise me one thing: when you grow up, you don't be the kind of woman that goes around deceiving men." And she's like, "I promise."
The moment before that, when Imogene and Addie are still on the stairs.
Oh yeah.
And Imogene's worried because she's like, Moze is going to lose it and kill him.
Oh, right.
And starts telling Addie, like, if this would have happened where I grew up, that person would go around to the wood pile, get the double-sided axe, and cut him up like kindling. And then she gets scared, and so they run up. But that doesn't happen. But I love that image. That's just such a beautiful
Imogene
image.
just hitting doubles and,
so good.
Going yard with their dialogue.
I mean, I love that. But I also like the poetry of this movie also, and very much in the writing. And this film was written. This film was written by the same person who I gotta find this out. I was fascinated by what
Alvin Sargent.
Yeah, who had written? Like, he has the strangest kind of stuff he'd written. He wrote.
Ordinary People.
Ordinary People, not my favorite by any means. But he wrote What About Bob?
Oh, What About Bob?
And Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3. Like, how crazy is that? I loved What About Bob, one of my favorite comedies of all time. And the Spider-Man
that's a family picture we should do for sure.
Oh, What About Bob's amazing.
We'll have to do that one.
Bob. So anyway, and then the Spider-Man trilogy, very interesting.
So this leads to our final grift, which is discovered yet again by Addie, who's reading people. They happen to be in some random town
because he had lost his,
or
the love of his life,
or he's just kind of dumb. But
just dumb, yeah.
And so they're at some hotel that they're probably going to stay at for the night because it's really dark, and they have good money. Some money. No, they've lost a lot of money to Trixie's like spending habits. They haven't worked in like 20 days, as Addie says. And Addie spies a man in the hotel that's behaving like oddly. He keeps going in the back and coming out, and going in the back and coming out. And then she reports this to Moze, and Moze is like, wait, that's a bootlegger. And so they start following him, and they see him accept some money, and then he goes into some shed out in the woods near the hotel and gets a box of liquor. And so they come up with this grift where they're going to steal a whole bunch of liquor and sell it back to the bootlegger, which includes this scene. So they steal it from the shed, not all of it, just a portion of it, right? And they're driving off, and I swear Tatum O'Neal almost goes flying off these crates that are piled on top of that, whatever 1930s car.
It's a convertible, probably 6 feet above where you would, like, the top of the seat. So maybe like she's 11, 12 feet off the ground.
Yeah, and the crate goes like, whoa, and she almost topples. And Peter Bogdanovich is like, that's a scream of actual terror. Again, 70s filmmaking, 80s filmmaking with kids. Where's the safety? It's crazy.
Exactly.
But this leads to
Where were the adults?
this leads to their grifting demise because they, after successfully selling back the liquor to the bootlegger for like $400-$500, a lot of money, the biggest score of the whole film, they get busted by the police. And the policeman turns out to be the brother of the bootlegger.
That's right.
And they arrest him. But it also leads to, he's just like, I want the money back. Where's the money? He's like, I ain't no bootlegger. I don't got no money. And Addie has the money in her hat. And yet another like MacGuffin kind of shot. They like, they pan right into, or dolly right into her hat where we can see the money in her hat. But then they search the hat and she's smuggled it out of there by then. And it's like they end up just running, and then they get in the car, and then they're being chased, which then leads to the most random scene of the entire film, where we get this random family in the middle of nowhere that they want to trade cars with this old man, and he ignores them. It's like, we want to trade cars. We want your old truck. And out comes 5 huge strapping sons, or whatever the hell he is, one of which is Randy Quaid's probably first film.
No, I think Randy Quaid was in Last Picture Show.
Oh, okay. So Randy Quaid has a very, very brief part where he and Ryan O'Neal are going to do some wrestling over the car, the trade, because they don't want the trade, even though the car is worth way more money than their piece of crap truck. And so they go to wrestling, and Ryan O'Neal total sucker punches him and wins. So they end up in the truck, and they end up over the line, and they think they're all gotten good, and they're about to set up their next grift, and they get caught by the dirty cop, and Ryan gets beaten up, and they lose all the money, and finally they happen to be in Missouri. They're right near St. Joe, and they go back to the very, very beginning, and Addie's going to get dumped off at her aunt.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is when he first screened
the white picket fence around the aunt's house, there's food.
Yep.
It seems like a perfect house, right?
Right. And Addie walks in with her skates and her,
those metal
radio.
Skates. Oh my gosh.
That you strap to shoes.
So painful.
I know. And the funny thing is she goes in, and Peter Bogdanovich shows, like, in the screening of the film, that happened to be a moment that was at end of one of the reels. And at that time, like when it's a screening, for the producers, they don't like have perfect transitions. They just they pause, put the next reel on, and then and they're like, the producer's like, wait, is that the end? They're like, really? Are you serious? This is the end? And he's like, no, there's more. And the more is Addie plants the photo from the carnival that she had taken of herself upon the paper moon, which the eponymous paper eponymous. What's that word?
Eponymous.
Okay.
I don't know how to use it, but that's what it is.
Well, it's the aforementioned, the piece of the MacGuffin that sums out, allows them to call it paper moon, but it also becomes the ending. And so Moze leaves, and he stops his truck because it's stalling yet again because it's a piece of crap now. Addie's like has the aunt being really motherly, super nice, right?
Yeah.
And she's just sitting there, and she's off she's like talking to her from a distance. Oh, you must have been so, it must have been so terrible. We got food for you. We got clothes for you. It's going to be great. We're going to take care of you. He looks at the photo, and he's like realizing whatever, he's ignoring it at the same time. And then he turns around, and Addie's running to him, right? And sadly, Addie's running away from a maternal influence, because in real life, we think this is what Tatum O'Neal should be running towards. and it's this faded connection between the two of them, where he says to her, "I'm done with hanging around you." And then what does she say?
I want my $200.
You still owe me $200, right? It's the Better Off Dead Paperboy.
Exactly.
I want my $15, $10.
Where's
right?
my $2?
It was at $2, right?
It's $2. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a paperboy.
Yeah.
It can't be $10.
And he gets all mad. And before he really can say anything else, the truck starts to drift and go down the hill, and they have nothing else to do. It's just like the previous conversation in the car. They start fighting, but before you know it, the moment takes the better of them. We just have to keep moving. And that was one of the other lines from that earlier fight that was so good, is they're talking about like all these towns they should go through. And it's like, oh, and then we could veer into this town and we could get the Bibles before we go to that town where we could look for some marks. And then he says, we just got to keep veering. And that's like the whole message. Like, we just got to keep, that's the best we can do. Right.
Yeah.
As you described them, they're survivors, but they're going to survive best together.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because the movie captures that, and it's a peripatetic, right? It moves from place to place, and you're not looking at this huge overarching, plot or climax, but you have these kind of moments within these two people trying to make a life together, whose relationship is kind of strained, but everybody's relationship is strained in this movie because of the conditions in which they find themselves.
Right.
And it's interesting too because you see that, but like you said at the beginning of this, there's also the specter of retro, hindsight or whatever, knowing Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal's story. Yeah. Tatum O'Neal becomes, one of the biggest stars of the 70s as a result of winning an Oscar at 9. Her father has never won an Oscar. He had his own problems, and supposedly maybe there was some friction as a result of that. And like maybe this film, which was such a great kind of, moment of them, like you said, sharing a passion, could lead to that, ruin of a relationship. I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into reading biography, but you can't help not, when you read a bit about Ryan O'Neal's life as a result, and then see this film, and then kind of think about that. You know what I mean? It's hard not to read the two in parallel.
Yeah.
Even if it's easy hindsight. Anyone could do it, but still, it's remarkable to think about what was a result of maybe this amazing film that they did together.
And they were so intertwined for so long, like. Tatum O'Neal's fortunes declined just as much as her father's in the industry, sadly, right? Because she herself, as the result of abusers abuse or abuse themselves and things like that, whatever you want to say, pop psychology wise, but she became addicted to drugs as well, and her career teetered. She found her place a few times. There was some sort of Blue Blood or some sort of TV show she was a regular on for a period of time, but these are two people that all arrows pointed up for them. And you imagine they could have each had their own successful careers, not needing one another, but the mess of their lives kind of overtook them both. And I think, and that's, humans being humans, ultimately, it's really hard.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And did we mention, so I mentioned earlier, I know Ryan O'Neal probably best from Barry Lyndon. In retrospect, watching Lyndon over time and, people having various readings of his performance in that film. But that film will probably be known as one of the greatest films, of all time, arguably, and I don't think I'm overstating that. But Ryan O'Neal suggests that's the film that ruined his career.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to think about, like, he's part of this amazing kind of document. Yet for him, it was the worst thing he ever did in 1975 because it ruined his career.
I think he ruined his own career. Like, there's so much about, this is an era where critics and producers controlled Hollywood so much. And like, they could read and say like, oh, Ryan this, Ryan that, he was terrible. But there's so many actors and especially harder for women and actresses that to make comebacks. But if he had a healthier life, he could have probably come back easily. I mean, there's no reason that someone who is a Hollywood glitterati, like the history of Hollywood, they love those people. Like, it's like, Robert Forster types. These people would easily have found their way, but his life was too much of a mess,
Yeah. It's interesting too. Another film I think about when I think about this era is The Champ, right?
Yeah.
With Jon Voight.
Yeah.
And it turns out, and I didn't know this till reading up on this film, that he was supposed to do The Champ.
Right.
And he didn't do it because they wouldn't include his son
Yeah.
as the actor.
Which one? Which one was it? It was Redmond. It was his.
It's Farrah Fawcett's son.
Yes, which is he's God. He was a mess. And then like all the children were, except for Patrick O'Neill, who was the son of a woman that he was never married to, and probably just staying away from that family probably is what was made his life somewhat normal, right? In comparison, like, poor Griffin, like he's screwed up there. Did you know, this is the one that blew my mind. I didn't know he is boating in Europe with Francis Ford Coppola's son. And he does this thing where he tries to zoom through between two boats, but the boats are connected by a tow line. And his son gets killed. It's really like Griffin ducks just in time, but Coppola's son gets basically not decapitated, but gets struck by the tow line and gets killed. Right?
Get out of here.
Yeah. So it's like
Coppola lose two sons?
I don't know. I mean, this is one of them.
I heard a story just from a friend the other day. I don't know if it's true, that Coppola's son was climbing over his fence and got impaled on like one of those big metal fences outside an estate. So now, wow, Jesus. I know this is taking us far afield.
Yeah, Giancarlo Roman's not dead. This is Giancarlo. Roman's alive.
So I got to tell my friend that he's telling me I would have repeated that story if I didn't.
Yeah, it was a speedboating incident. Yeah, I was right. Right, with Griffin O'Neill. Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia. Anyway, so much tragedy in the O'Neill family. It's so much trauma, and this film is the thing that's trying to like. It's in the ultimately the lyrics of the actual song. It's a Paper Moon. This idea, it's like this fantasy that we want it to be is not reality, or the fantasy we want to be reality. That's what it is. We want this fantasy of our relationship that we're seeing this film to be reality, and it's just not possible.
And I was going to say, like, how do we as Family Pictures Podcast, like, make sense of some of this? Because we're dealing with families, and you know what? You nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
No, you nailed it. All right. Thanks,
you nailed it.
Thanks, everybody, on another Family Pictures podcast. It's been a little while, but we'll be back. Maybe I know we're going to do the Bad News Bears someday, but I don't think
we will someday. But this is my pick now.
Yeah,
next one is my pick. So
Jim's up next. Yep. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.